I'd like to speak to you a little about making a diagnosis. On the surface, the concept of making a diagnosis may seem to belong only to the physician, because we've associated it with the physician and the physician's activities. But everyone has not only the capacity, but the responsibility to make a diagnosis before he goes into action in anything. For instance, take a simple thing as mending a fence. Before you mend a fence, you don't just go out and buy wood or chain link and just put it on. You go and examine the fence. You know what should be correct, and you see where the problem is, and then you can fix that particular problem. The good thing about it is that it's visible. When we're dealing with human emotion, we're also dealing with something that's not visible. And we have to make a diagnosis. How do we do that? Not only is it invisible, it's highly complex. So, unlike the simple metaphor of the fence, let me give you a more complex metaphor. It's going to be a rather indelicate metaphor, but you will understand where it's taking you. To begin with, you notice that you have rectal bleeding. You go to your doctor, you said, I'm seeing blood in my stools. And he says, okay, here is a suppository. You put it up in your rectum every morning and it will stop the bleeding. Well, even if it does stop the bleeding, you're not satisfied that he's made a diagnosis. So you go to another doctor. Of course, doctors are not that simplistic. So hopefully that they will have the intelligence to go deeper. But I'm using this as an example, so please don't. I am a physician, and I'm not insulting other physicians. But let's go to another physician. And you complain of rectal bleeding. He says, yes, I see. I notice you have rectal bleeding. Let me examine. He uses proctoscope. He looks up in your rectum. He says, yes, I can see some blood, but it's not coming from your rectum, it's coming from higher up. And for a young person like yourself, the most likely cause is an ulcer. So let's give you treatment for an ulcer, and if it works, we know that you had an ulcer and it has been treated. Again, even if it works, you're not satisfied, because you don't know that he's made a diagnosis. So you go to another doctor. And this doctor says, okay, yes, I can see everything, but you probably have an ulcer, let me take a look. He does a gastroscopy, he does a sigmoidoscopy, he looks up, he looks down, he looks from an x-rays, and he confirms it. Yes, the only place that you're bleeding is from a small ulcer in your stomach, so let's give you some treatment. Well, he has at least made a diagnosis, and his treatment will be directed to the ulcer, but you're still concerned. You're concerned because you don't know why you have an ulcer. So you go to someone else and he says, okay, yes, you have an ulcer. Let me find out why. He takes a history from you. He does all sorts of other examinations to see what could precipitate the ulcer. And in the history, he asks you about your eating habits, your drinking habits, your stress conditions, etc. Nothing is showing up, and he asks you, well, is there anything else that you're doing? So, well, the only thing is every morning I have to swallow about 10 or 12 aspirins. He said, whew. Okay, that can burn a hole in any stomach. Why are you taking 10 or 12 aspirins? Well, I get up with a headache. But after I take 10 or 12 aspirin, it goes over. The only problem is it comes back the next day. Well, hold on a second. You've got a different problem here. You're actually causing the ulcer, but it is because you're treating something else. Let's examine that. He sends you to a neurologist who discovers a small benign tumor in the meninges, and he sends you for treatment. It's removed. You don't need the aspirins because you don't have a headache. You're not causing the ulcer, and everything is back to normal. Okay, this is a simplistic example, but it shows you that the presentation is not necessarily pointing to the diagnosis. We have a habit when we're dealing with the non-measurable aspect of the human mind. Rather than looking for the problem, we go ahead putting together solutions for the manifestation. Jean-Paul Sartre said it correctly when he said the presentation reveals the essence. It is the essence. You're looking for the essence of the person. If we don't look for it, we can end up just having a series of treatments purely for the presentation. It's like somebody who takes alcohol. Why? Just because they take it doesn't mean that the next person who is using it for the same reason. Somebody who feels depressed doesn't necessarily mean that that is the problem. Let us find the core problem. But because we are not capable of looking at or into the human mind or the human emotions, the only way we can discover it is to let the person reveal it to us. The revelation reveals the essence. But sometimes they don't reveal it directly. They will reveal it only if they ask the right questions. So we have to make a diagnosis, whether it is as a professional or whether I am making a diagnosis within myself, or as a parent I'm making a diagnosis on what is happening with my child, or as a manager, what is happening with my worker. I have to recognize that the manifestation is not the problem in itself. We do have another problem here. In the body, we're born with, almost a perfect body. It is fully balanced, it's fully defined. The baby is at the best level of the body's balance. As we grow older, we actually make it worse. I have not improved this body in the past 6 or 7 years. But I've improved what I know. That's the only thing I've improved. So really, the mind, unlike the body, which starts off balanced but gets imbalanced because of a disease, the mind starts off imbalanced and gets balanced. And in some people, that balance can be developed to a higher degree than in others. So basically, the problem is not the imposition of an abnormality. The problem is the insufficient building of a balance. So the imbalance we're born with, that's what we have to look for. And that's where we have to make a diagnosis. The diagnosis is not on what went wrong, but on what didn't yet go right. And it is easier to improve what didn't yet go right in an area that we can't measure than to treat or reverse what we think went wrong in an area we can neither see nor measure. The Understanding Change program gets into this in a little more depth. And I hope that I have stimulated you somewhat in this. Lot of good information in it. Please continue to view. Thanks. Thank you very much.